Kim Clark, first one's already in? Wow,
Do you want me to grab the little table and sit over here?
sure,
Or do you think there's gonna be enough people that we can't fit at the table?
I don't think I don't know, there should be two people here, we should probably sit back here.
Let me grab the,
The old days. Judy's coming, so I printed her packet, but the Nick presentation came out. You didn't see Nick yet, did you?
No.
He's not in yet. I gotta try to reprint those. There's that stool too, all you need some mouse, right? Whatever's gonna work for you, Jamie.
this is gonna work for me, John. I'm gonna sit. Yeah, over here. I'll just move this other chair.
Oh, so it's cut up, here, Jim, I need your graphic design skills. His PowerPoint is all cut off in the packet,
Okay.
but probably you can't do anything with that. I just need to print the PowerPoint for Judy. I can, sure.
Do that on a PC.
What are you trying to do? Right there, that's done. I can hard code something in real quick if you want me to.
Yeah.
Shortcut.
You are. Oh. Perfect.
Okay, right.
What pages? So 23. You. You just tried to do this already, right?
Well, I printed it, but it came out,
Did you print the whole package
I
out?
printed the whole packet.
Did you hit fit?
No, it did not.
What's the downstairs
I don't know if I had it on there.
further?
I printed it upstairs.
All right, well, if I hit fit.
Okay, did you print the whole packet?
Yeah.
So we're just trying to stretch out its small font.
Next presentation is PowerPoint, so I have the PowerPoint, I think, in my email, so worst case, this is ridiculous. I have so many drinks. So nice.
You want keyboard and that?
Yeah.
Well, clutter over there, Jim.
It's because I have a lot of beverages. I take hydration very seriously.
What's in each?
My protein shake, my coffee, and my water.
Going to bathroom every 4 minutes.
Oh, that's healthy, John.
A lot of fluids. We know right back with you. I heard that.
My neighbors are probably, they just sleep on Friday. So I was texting them this morning and just.
Oh, yes, that's what you're doing, that's right. I was talking to somebody and I was like, I feel like Jimmy said she was not gonna be here on Friday.
I will be working from home. I still have, I have somebody coming to look at my. That once again, come and see if it would be. Heat pump.
Would you put it in your living room?
Mm-hmm. Maybe the hallway, I don't know.
But ideally one for the entire first, like, for the first floor.
Ideally, we would figure out if we can have, if what we need to do to our solar in order to have a solar heat pump.
Yeah,
And then if feasible, when we do our addition, it would be great to be able to add multiple.
like multiple zones.
Yeah, because like I want to come upstairs,
Yeah.
or like ideally I'd want a small one in my room and probably the boys' rooms too.
Morning, Tim.
Hi, Tim.
What's happening? Are you gonna bring up the PowerPoints and stuff, or who's doing that?
I don't know that I,
I put mine on the S drive in the CCTA. Know if you wanted to pluck it off of there onto the desktop.
how the hell do I do that on a PC? Where's that, how do I get to the
The
X-ray?
folder on the bottom. That's
Right in the bottom of the folder. Yeah,
I'm like, I don't have my glasses on, but I do. It's so cute.
go to this PC. On the left side, yep. Yeah, go to the S drive,
all right.
bottom right. Go to CCTA and mine should be right in there at the bottom. Or somewhere. in there.
OND program update, there it is.
That's it.
I don't know.
You can pluck that on the
Morning.
desktop.
Oh my gosh, Tim, you are really testing my PC skill.
What?
Morning, Paul.
Oh, you gotta be able to present. Thank you, Jamie.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Hi, Paul.
Paul, I just.
Good, how you doing? Good.
I just heard the news and I wanna offer my condolences.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so sorry to hear about that, Paul. Had she been sick for a long time, Paul, or?
She's had dementia for about 5 years, 4 or 5 years. So it's, yeah, it's a gradual.
Yeah.
Amy, you'll see that Kim Clark is in the waiting room. Thank you. Kim, who's done nothing wrong.
You know, knock on wood.
This is, hey, Amy, morning, how are you? Morning, Paul. That is pretty good, you know.
Well, John, how are you?
Comments.
I'm doing well,
Yeah,
thank
yeah.
you.
I find that it's a different
You're on the
story.
table.
So
You're
that-
not gonna have space.
Alright, so you want me to sit over in the
You're all
side,
right. When you're presenting, let's pull a chair up here.
pull a chair up in the end? Got it.
Any idea, Amy, how many clerk on
I have no idea.
that?
I know Bob and Catherine are not,
Yeah,
Susan is not.
But Judy is.
Okay.
I'm going back and forth.
Hopefully we get a few.
Did you brew some coffee?
John, how are you today?
Good, how are you?
I didn't have coffee this morning, but I shot, sure, there'd be a big pot of coffee.
Coffee is the one thing I did not, account for.
No coffee in this place, but there's a big pot of Diet Coke in my fridge.
You and Judy got to duke that one out, Paul. She's gonna be up there.
Brother. I knew.
Jimmy has Diet Coke.
Yeah, there's always a pot of Diet Coke in my office. You're welcome to help yourself out.
I can run out. and get a-
Amy, that's the same face I make when he offers me Diet Coke.
I like Diet Coke, but it's too much caffeine for me. So I have like one a year and that's all I can handle.
I have one.
Jimmy and Stephanie don't drink coffee.
No,
What's that?
we don't need pods in the break.
I'm really
I don't
sorry to
think so,
drink
John.
coffee.
There might be
I'll share mine with you.
On the, over by the refrigerator in the kitchen, there, at one point, there was some pot there.
I'm just gonna walk over and like, you know, some type of stuff.
Yeah, you know.
I have my one cup, it's all coffee in there.
Mine is happy.
Yeah, I can check.
Paul, do you want a cup?
Make that cream. Always a sugar.
You wanna get a box of Joe at Dunkin' Donuts, but you
Alright,
didn't plan for
where am
that.
I
You
sitting?
want me to, you know, I have two supervisors on me, send Eva, get some coffee.
We might only have a couple people in here, so.
Let me know, I can grab them.
Paul or Amy, do you guys wanna pack it? Do you have it digitally?
I actually would love to. Well, no,
I have two, can you print two more? Do you want to pack it, Paul?
No, but.
I started. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our kind of hybrid, attempted in-person, but hybrid meeting. It's nice to see you, all of you. You're gonna get the fun, like Amy can't see you on the screen and look at anything in front of her, kind of glasses on, glasses off kind of behavior, so watch out. For those of you in the room, please help yourself to treats. If you're curious, it's a cranberry orange muffins and a blueberry coffee cake, all local fruits.
Delicious.
And as a nod to our Franklin County, the cranberries are Franklin County cranberries, so you know, because that's, yeah, more fun than that. All right, so, do we have any adjustments to the agenda? And I think we do. Clayton, remind me what it is, please.
Yeah, so the Nekrasen group is available after 9 o'clock, and I think that they will be important to hear from as we think about the legislative approach. And so my recommendation is that we take items 9, 10, and 11 and put them before the legislative approach.
Got it.
And that'll get us talking to legislative approach at 9 o'clock. In theory.
Thank you. Any other adjustments to the agenda? And we'll open up for public comment. Just to kind of kick off our public comment, we're going to limit public comments to 2 minutes per person if we need to, so just kind of a blanket thing. And I believe, Kim, you're here?
Yes, I am, Amy.
Okay, go for it.
I recommend the GMD staff will let me back on the buses. I really need to get back on the buses. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Kim.
Yeah.
Any other public comment? Anybody else here? Okay, moving on to the consent agenda, pages 3 through 10 in our packet. It is the November 18th board meeting minutes and the tech register. Anybody had an opportunity to review and would like to make a motion?
Yeah, I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thanks, Susan. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Andrea. Any further discussion?
I want the check register, gotta do that too.
Yeah, that was in there. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Susan, did you mean to just move to approve the minutes?
Consent agenda.
The consent agenda.
Oh, sorry about that. Yes, I move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, any opposed? All right. We will move into the FY 27 operating budget approval for public comment. I'm gonna turn it over to you.
And so is Nick there in the room?
He's there in the room and refusing
Excellent.
to eat my treats. I don't know what's wrong with him.
Oh, man. it's
Budget passes.
Poor judgment there.
No, Dutchy chair.
And so
Wow.
Nick is going to present the FY 27 budget. I want to start off by saying that a few months ago, when we got our fiscal year 25 picture, our end of year picture, it looked pretty rosy. And it's not quite as rosy as we had hoped. And so I want to apologize that this budget is not as optimistic as I think that we thought it would be a few months ago. And I'm looking forward to next presentation, and I'll turn it over to him.
Yeah, so really, when we provided our guidance a couple months ago, we didn't include the rural transfer, and really, we probably should just withheld that until we understood the impact of the rural transfer. In your board materials today, you've got a couple things from me. You've got a very short memo to you folks about basically what I'm providing you and what I'm asking for. You've got my extensive memo to the finance committee, which is kind of the cliff notes to the budget, I would say. And then you've got my budget presentation to the finance committee, which I'm gonna go over again with all of you folks. So apologize, Paul, this is gonna be another a review, but
I'm a slow learner next.
I think it's important
I'll pick it up.
to go through it all with the wider board, so. Okay, so again, we're talking about the proposed operating budget. I always like to start with a couple of key items. Again, this is an urban only budget. It's largely level funded, with a couple caveats from V-Trans, meaning the funds that we expect to get in the state grant award, we're expecting to be relatively the same, for what we received in 26. Current service levels are planned. There's about a 6% average assessment increase. There was some volatility in the assessments this year because of what's going on with ADA, and I can talk more about that. And then the rural transfer is really what's driving the operating result, which is an operating deficit. I just like to provide a proposed consolidated view of the budget. You can see it's about a $21 million budget. We're looking at about a 7% increase in revenues and about a 10% increase in expenses. And like I said, I'll go into each line in more detail. So starting with federal, state, and local revenues, again, this is like 90% of the budget, so we're gonna spend a lot of time here. Not a lot of change from the previous year. It's about 23% in local, 12% in state, and then the majority coming from federal. I would say federal jumped up a little bit in 27 because we are planning a continuation of the carbon reduction funds that we got from V-Trans. And kind of the big reason that this year is, I mean, it's still not great, but 28 is so much worse, is because essentially I'm using every dollar of 5307 reserves that we had, that we built up through the pandemic. Because obviously during the pandemic, we got a lot of carbon reduction funds. We still received our regular apportionment. So we had some funds, you know, in reserves that we could use to really manage a lot of the expense increases experienced during the pandemic. And really, this is my expectation is the final that we're going to have that available to us. So I've got about $1.9 million of extra 5307 funds, which thankfully we have a local match for. But if we didn't have those funds, obviously the picture would be much, you know, more difficult. And that's why 28 is going to be important. I like to provide this chart. It just kind of shows what I think is what's driving the problem, and over reliance on federal funding. You can see during, you know, I wasn't here during those years, and I don't think we ever, you know, had perfect financials, but obviously not to the problems we're experiencing today. But back, you know, in the early 2012s to really, you know, kind of 2019 or before the pandemic, we had a much more equal mix of federal, state, and local funding. And as you can see during the pandemic, you know, at one point we got to 3/4, it was all federal money. And we really just been putting all the cost increases we've been experiencing on the federal credit card, and that credit card is now maxed out. So state and local are gonna have to, you know, become a larger, you know, part of the picture, or expenses are gonna have to, you know, be reduced. Looking at federal grants and the mix that I'm budgeting for in 27, as I mentioned, we've got about a $1.4 million increase in 5307 funds year over year. We do have a decent increase in planning, but I want to point out that a good chunk of that is really pass-through funds that are part of a RAISE grant on the engine for CCRBC. Preventative maintenance is a good chunk of funding. 2.2 of that comes from V-Trans. The other 200,000 we pulled out of our apportionment. And then the carbon reduction funds, like I said, are coming from V-Trans as well. We got those in 26. However, I haven't gotten them yet, but I expect to have them soon. 27 originally, I didn't have these in the budget, but Ross assured me that we'll get them in 27, so I put them in the budget, as well as a higher level of state operating or a continuation of the 2.2 million that we've received from V-Trans. And this, I think, is kind of shows you what our problems are in 28. And obviously we have a problem in 27, but 28 is going to be much more substantial. You can see, 24, 25, 26, 27, $5, $6, $7 million. And then we're basically down to our regular apportionment in 28. We get an annual apportionment every year from the federal government for operating costs. And it's about 4.4 million or 4.5. We peel off the money and put it into PM. I don't want to confuse you, but it's about 4.5 million dollars. And we had money built up in that in those funds through the pandemic because we had COVID funds and we're able to use those instead of use that money. Well, we spent all the COVID funds and now we spent all the reserves for regular formula funds. And you can see the COVID funds, getting spent down over the years as well. So now in 28, we've got no COVID funds left. In 28, we've just got the regular apportionment, and that's 28 is so much worse. Yes.
Quick question. Thanks for going over this slide. Formula 5307 is also at risk because that I believe is funded through the intermodal or the transportation bill, which needs to get renewed next November. Am I correct? Or is there an alternate funding source that's more durable? Because one of my concerns is the feds are going to have to decide whether to renew this next November if it's part of the larger transportation bill. And I don't know if
I don't know the details of that, Chapin. I know in years where they've had problems in Washington, we've gotten a partial portion for the year, so at least we're able to kind of measure that. I don't think we've ever experienced a time where our apportionment wasn't going to come for that year, but I don't know that we can get you.
Yeah, it would be great if staff could research whether it is part of the federal T-bill reauthorization.
Okay.
Which is coming up.
Oh, I can answer some of that, Chapin. So what I can tell you is that there are factions within the new administration that would like to see public transit funding go to zero. There are also factions within the new administration that would like to see public transit funding moved away from major metropolitan areas, blue areas, to smaller cities, which would include us. So we are in a situation where we don't know beyond next September. We have scenarios where we could have zero federal funding, and we have scenarios where we could have more funding than we have now. And all of them, in my mind, are viable, pathways. And so this is something that we can plan for. I, in the past, have had John Moore work together some plans of what we would do if we suddenly lost federal funding, and it is a very, very limited service. But I think that everybody needs to be aware of the fact that our 65% of our budget comes from the feds, and we don't know if that'll be zero or more, this time next year.
Adding to your point, that there's a lot of uncertainty here.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it hard to run a business when, we don't know how much we're going to get from or can't guarantee what we're going to get from V-Trans. We can't guarantee what we're going to get from the feds. The only thing we can kind of guarantee is we know the locals will run their 25%. So it's a difficult business model to do long range planning on. Okay. So now jumping down to the other part, feds.
Oh, sorry.
Just a quick question about the 5307 funds. So just to understand there's sort of been a bank account build up that you haven't had to tap or fully.
Yeah.
The proposal here is to use the remainder in 27, is that in order to close the gap in 27, or because there is risk that if it's not used in 27, that it might be clawed back?
So it's to balance the budget, which we don't even do with using all of it.
Understand, but just understanding the why of it, because, you know, as we think about 28 being an even bigger fiscal cliff, there's a consequence to using all of it in 27.
Yeah, for
So I
sure.
wasn't sure if that
Yeah.
was because there's a risk that it might be pulled back, which would be another.
No, but that does bring up the COVID fund, so, you know, kind of been holding on to those funds through the pandemic, because it's nice to have 100% federal funds available to you. But, you know, in talking with the FTA, they're like, spend them, because you don't know what, you know, the administration could claw them back, and I don't want to be the person responsible for losing $2 million because I held on to it. We're planning on spending all the COVID relief in 26. You know,
In 26.
in 26, yeah.
Right.
And which is why we're spending all of the regular formula in 27, because it's all that's left.
I'm just curious. Historically, did GMT spend all of the federal funding that was received in a given year in that year? Or was some of it budgeted for future years?
So typically, I mean, I can't speak for before I got here, but when I arrived, he had a little bit of buffer. I think we had like $800,000, not millions. And the typical process was we spent all of, you know, our apportionment in that year. So yeah, it's been pretty typical. It's usually not enough. We need funding from V-Trans, and it's just a whole part of, you know, about 50% of the funding for the operating budget, so.
Thank you.
It's also true, sorry, it's also true that we were starting to have these particular conversations before COVID, and then the COVID funds came and delayed all of this. So we were really just kind of picking up where we started in what, 2019?
Yeah, I would agree. When I got here, my first budget here was a problem. It wasn't $1 million problem, though. I think we were at 800,000 or something. It was like, yeah, it was smaller, but it was still a problem. Yeah.
Like some further perspective, I can go back to 2014. And the budget we put together in 2014 that the board approved was about $400,000 in deficit. So this is not new for GMT.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, for anyone.
If anything, COVID helped us for a little bit.
Yeah.
In some ways.
And we got stuck with the inflation and, same funding amounts. You know, I will say that when I bring you the proposed budget, it's almost hard not to have a deficit, because I'm essentially planning on level funding, because I don't want to overestimate the revenues I can get from, you know, V-Trans or the feds. But I'm not doing that with the expenses. I'm budgeting what I think the expenses are gonna be, so it makes it pretty hard for the budget to balance when I have to do that. And then we kind of deal in the adjustment when we negotiate state grant awards. And then talk about, you know, other changes we can make to balance the budget. Now, we hope that that's, you know, not 800,000 or $1 million. That's a lot of money to find, but it is, so. Okay, moving on, state and local assessments. So, I'm sorry, there's tons of pie charts in this presentation, but I think they help present the information the best way. So this is the assessments. This is really just for the urban. Well, this is an urban only budget, so it's for the urban side. And as you can see, you know, Burlington, about half of the assessments, got Essex Junction, Essex Town broken out this time. So you can see, their, respective, percentages and the rest of the members. Like I said, assessments got a little, confusing this year because of the changes in the ADA, assessment. We didn't really go through the correct process, to pass that last year. So, Clayton's going out, getting it passed this year. And because of that, we did change the discount last year. We're giving that money back. We're also, going back to the 50% discount. You might remember last year we went to, 50 to making folks pay for 55% of the estimated cost of service instead of 50. And to offset the impact of that, we really increased the fixed route assessments by an equal amount. So that's why the fixed route assessments are going up, but really the ADA is going down. So it's kind of a net neutral change. But I will just, reiterate, ADA is part of the problem that we're facing. I don't know why this was set up this way before I got here, but to raise 50 cents on the dollar of a program is kind of crazy. I can only think that it was because we were flush with federal money, so we thought we would never have to, raise more than 50%, but we do, and that's over a $2 million program. So that's $1 million right there that we're short, and we're having to find other money to support. And then just break out of the state funds that we're getting for V-Trans, so state operating 2.2, and then we get some state match for a couple other small grants.
And so Nick, can you remind me we increased the fixed route by, was it 20%?
19.5, I believe. I mean, we reweighted them by service. So we did go back and essentially true up the assessments, if you want to call it that, by those who lost service, got a smaller increase, those who maintained service or got more service, went up. So we did reweight them. So not everyone went up by 19.5%. It could have been less or more based on the changes in service.
Catherine's got a question, I think. Go ahead, Catherine.
Thanks, Amy. You keep noting you're budgeting for the level state operating grant. Have we gotten any further indication of the state's willingness to contribute toward the budget hole created by losing the rural share of the indirect?
The last I remember, they were, Dan was like, well, we got to see the budget. We got to see the number. And so we're giving them the number and hopefully we can, yeah. Okay, well, if there's no other questions, I'll move on. And then just sticking with assessments, this really just breaks it out by source. And obviously the fixed route assessments grew as a percentage of the overall assessments by a decent chunk, just because of the changes we went through in ADA. But we've got the major ones are fixed route and ADA, and then the other assessments are really mostly Burlington specific, having to do with the College Street shuttle or some additional school service that they purchased years ago that we break out. The capital of 75,000 it does apply to everyone, but it's a relatively small chunk of their overall share. And the College Street shuttle did shrink this turnaround because of the changes in the fare free there. So that assessment did go down, but I did budget a little bit more in fares and ADA fares to make up for the loss of that. Moving on to operating revenues. So this is about 11% of the total revenues that we budget. Obviously the big one here is fares. We've got some small increases in fares and in paratransit. The passenger revenue is really just mostly changes in the contracts we have with CATMA, and I budgeted a little bit more because of the College Street shuttle. We've got some other small changes there in miscellaneous revenue and purchase of service. Those are pretty minor. I think we lost a contribution from St. Mike's, which is for the miscellaneous purchase of service. And I think the miscellaneous revenue was a little high when I went back and looked at it, so I just reduced that for 27. Sure, go ahead.
Can you talk about the College Street shuttle ADA fares?
Yeah, so the College Street shuttle, previously, before we made the change to go back to collecting fares, was fare free. And you can't just say fixed route riders can be fare free. The whole ADA zone needs to be fare free. So meaning the service that we contract out to SSTA to provide, typically they would charge $4 each way, but for the folks that need rides in that zone, they're fare free. And we would assess that in actually Burlington's ADA assessment. We just tack on a little bit. I think it was like $13,000 a year or something like that. But we took that away, obviously, because now SSTA is charging a fare, or will be charging a fare, I think, as of
December 1st.
December 1st, so that'll be factored in, so I upped the revenue a little bit. To factor that in.
Nick, go ahead, one more question.
Sorry.
It's hard to see all the things going on.
Does the passenger revenue include the agreement with UVM and UVM Medical Center?
It does, yeah, and we have a contract for that, there's escalators in that, and so that's a big part of what's driving that $70,000 increase in 27.
Okay.
Yeah. This is just a chart I like to show, it's another part of, the issues that we faced and what happened, back pre-pandemic, we, were able to pay at one point, 20% of our budget with fares. Now it's down to 9%. I think the thing is the fares, we're actually getting back close to what we collected previously. The problem is the blue bar, the expense growth that we've experienced since the pandemic. You can see the slope of that, really picked up after the pandemic. And so I don't know if I would choose to get those COVID relief funds if we could not have experienced the inflation that we experienced, because those costs never go away.
Nick, on this one, can you elaborate a little bit? So it's helpful to hear that, the blue bar is the one that went up. As a percentage, can you speak a little bit more in the numbers there about is this a ridership is also not where it was, or it's approximately the same? I guess the question behind all this is, if expenses are going up, should we be thinking about whether charges should be going up? Which I know is a difficult subject, but
yeah, and
I can address this a little bit. So our fare caps are set to $50 because $50 was the cost of a pass 20 years ago. So absolutely, our fares have not, gone up with inflation. But of course, the problem then is if they had gone up with inflation, we'd be talking about $3 or $4, per ride, which I think is going to be challenging for our clientele.
Yeah, I think the loss of the link, hurt as well. We used to charge $4 each way for that, and the ridership was really high. I can't speak to, I think fare should be part of the discussion, but it's always a tricky subject because, you don't know what the elasticity of demand is. You up the prices, do less people you just lose more revenue because people don't ride. So I think you have to be careful with that. I think it would be good to include a ridership. We could have a bar as part of that chart, show what the ridership was over the years, and so you can see the change. I don't know offhand. I think ridership is close to what we experienced.
Ridership's down from what we've had previously, but with the service changes that we've made, we've sort of increased our efficiency. So it's sort of at a boardings per hour is probably at or above what we had last year.
aside from the fare-free period, when was the last time that there was a change in fares charged?
When we went back to charging fares.
Right, aside from.
I don't remember.
Yeah, it was 2019 with next gen.
Yeah, 2019.
It was a 25-cent increase.
And before that, we had an increase in the cost of our passes, but not in our cash fare.
And we don't collect full fares either, and we should. We don't.
Two questions. Well, have you had any conversations with the state since state employees returned to office on either the link or the Waterbury route? And then two, one's just a comment. I think any increase in fares has to be matched with a dramatic increase in service expansion, and that could be on existing routes, but I just think if we're gonna increase fares without getting at better dependability and frequency, then we're just gonna lose people, so.
I can answer that. So we have had lots of conversations. We've heard from a lot of state workers who are going back into the office. Clayton and I are working with Don O'Toole at the Waterbury State Office Complex to find a time in early January to go there, hear some feedback from riders to better understand what their needs are, and then give that information to Chris and his team, who will also be doing some surveying It's hard to make the assumption that we can just change the schedule without knowing what people's schedules are. So we're gathering that information, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the early January public meeting, which will include some feedback on service.
And if I could add a little bit to that, in consultation with VTrans, one of the things that they would, and I think makes sense, would like us to do is to hold off on making route additions or changes until we see what the actual, ridership patterns are. The other thing is that a lot of the feedback has been about the fact that we no longer use our coach buses for this route, because previously the state employees that were using this service before the pandemic would be on a motor coach, and a lot of the complaints have been about the poor quality of a city bus on the interstate is not exactly a great comfortable ride. And so I think that also factors into what we would be able to have as a fare on that route, because $4 when you got to sit in a nice coach seat is a big difference than sitting on a bus that's you almost need to wear earplugs.
Yes, I would second that. I have a question about the last time that fares were raised besides the reintroduction of fares. Do we have data on how ridership changed when that occurred? Or I think it's one thing for us to assume that our riders are price sensitive. I know we do have fare tiers. And so I think it would be helpful to understand, there may be some tiers that are sensitive, but there may be other tiers that are not sensitive. And so any information about that.
We're looking at that. We're also looking at the percentage of riders on the Link service who are in an unlimited access agreement through their employer. We have a fair amount of people who are already being paid for. And so looking at what that looks like. And prior to going fare free, we had a fare program with the state of Vermont where employees received a discount on their fare. The state paid the 100% and they got a 50% discount when they purchased their pass. So there's lots of conversations, I think, that still need to happen about the state workers and Link fare. So we're looking at that, and we'll look at, I think we do have some ridership trends from the last time we increased fares.
Yeah, I think for the whole system, and I feel like $2 is a good deal nationally, but maybe I'm not thinking about comparable bus services, but other modes of public transit, which do tend to be more expensive.
And I think that goes back to Clayton's point about the fare cap as well. Once somebody hits 12 and a half days of riding, they get the rest of their 30-day period for free. And that's a very generous cap. So that's, I think, a good first conversation to have rather than raising the base fare, raising the capped fare.
And remind me again, for folks who are qualified with the discounted annual monthly fare cap is again?
25.
25.
Do we have numbers on how many people that actually is who reach that cap?
Yes. Yeah, we can get that information.
I think the hope is at a future board meeting to sort of do, I think last year or 2 years ago, I did like a presentation on a lot of the different categories, so to sort of redo that again at a future board meeting.
Yeah, let's package all that fair conversation. Clearly is a conversation worth having with lots of elements. So let's give us some time to gather some data and have that at a future meeting and continue.
Okay.
Thank you.
I do want to, before we continue, just make sure that we also, when we talk about that fair discussion, need to continue the discussion that we've had this fall on whether we want to go towards verifying discounts. So that needs to be part of the fair discussion as well.
Yes, thank you.
So jumping down to the other part of the budget, operating expenses. One of the largest parts, obviously, is salary and fringe, and you're gonna notice there's quite a lot of change here. I just want to point out the other wages are, that's really the rural transfer. That's right. We're losing all of the rural funding sources that we had. We've got 2 FTEs that are coming back to the urban side from the rural. And so we're looking at about close to a 20% jump there. The other part of that is collective bargaining agreements and COLAs. The drivers and the non-union admin staff have about, or are budgeted at a 3.33% increase, which I think is great because it's parity, which is we haven't, the admin staff haven't typically received that in the past. The mechanics, I think about a 5.3% increase is what is baked into that contract. So if you look at the changes in the driver and mechanics, that's really just a function of the CBAs. Down to taxes and benefits, obviously the rural transfer plays into it as well, because, the folks that are now losing that rural funding source are coming over to the urban side. It's not just their wages, it's their benefits too. So that's, what's driving, the healthcare as well as, payroll taxes, retirement. I'll point out there are some collective bargaining agreement, special retirement payments that were approved. So I think that's about $60,000. So that's, impacting the retirement line item as well. And then there is some increased training costs for employee development because historically we've kind of been fortunate to rely on the rural RTAP funding to support company-wide training. That was funding we got from B-Trans. That funding, obviously, because the rural side will be going away, will be gone, and we still need to train people. So I had to increase the training budget.
I see Susan has her hand up, which I didn't see before. Sorry.
All right, go ahead, Susan.
Yeah, thank you. So you mentioned that we are gaining 2 FTEs as a result of the rural transfer, and that there will be partial FTEs from other staff. Do you know how many FTEs in sum the urban side will be gaining as a result of this transfer?
Don't know off the top of my head, Susan. I think there was about 6 or 7 folks that split their time between urban and rural. So I think that I can get you the exact number after. Paul asked me to put together a number of what I thought the rural transfer costs. And I did do that. If I can find my notes. It was about $1 million, Paul, is what I think 1 to 1.2. I'm sorry, I don't have it right.
That's a big number.
Yeah.
For the addition, Nick, not just of the 2, but of all the other partial ones as well?
Yeah, for really the whole, not just wages and benefits, other allocations that we made to the rural as part of the rural transfer, it all amounted to about $1 million or so dollars. And I think that's really what I gave, when I forecasted it to begin with. As I said, it was going to cost about $1 million.
And can you break out the wages and benefits and?
Yeah, I can do that. I don't have it right in front of me, but yeah, I can definitely do that. Maybe at the next finance committee. But I will say, Susan, it's mostly wages and benefits. But yeah, happy to get to the specifics on that.
What were the proposed savings for the rural transfer? There's supposed to be a lot of savings. Anybody have that number? What it's supposed to be?
I don't remember what exactly they thought they were going to save. I don't think
It's about that amount.
Yeah, I thought it was $1 million or a little more.
Yeah. Which I think is one of the things that we've heard pretty consistently from Nick is his belief that in the long run, this wasn't actually going to save money, but it would be better for us operationally. And I think that Nick's, forecast on that is accurate. I do want to make sure that we understand some things. And so when we say that there's 2 positions that are being added to urban, really it's 1 position being added to urban because John Moore provided service to rural. And so he transferred from urban to provide service to rural where it was needed and will be coming back. That's not a new, position. It's just that it was budgeted in rural for fiscal year 26. And so I just want to make sure that people think that, this is somebody that it provided urban with some savings by having him transfer to rural, his costs to rural when he was working on rural. And so I just want to make sure people are aware of that. The other thing I want to let folks know is that I reached out to talk about potentially having a study done on our admin staffing levels. And because there's been concern about how we approached the fiscal gap and whether we need to reduce staff. And folks may recall from the organizational assessment that we were staffed appropriately for a small transit agency. So I'm a little concerned to hear that we are once again thinking about reducing staff, because in my mind, that's what got us into the difficulties of the last 10 years. And I feel like we will be repeating mistakes. When you look at the report that we provided to the legislature last year, twice, this board unanimously agreed on a report that said that at some time in the future, we will need to retain admin staff, and that will lead to future additional service cuts. So that is a position that we've taken and that we would need to be moving from if we decided to go this route. There is going to be a study that's done on all transit agencies that I would like GMT to join in the early calendar year that would look at staffing levels at all agencies. And I think that we should join that and then use that information to help guide us.
Thank you for that, Austin. And then I think we have to pick up our pace a little bit.
Yeah, Clay, are there any conversations about finding staff at all transit agencies that can be shared to cover costs or any other services or procurement or anything like that?
You know, I think that that's a great idea. It is something that I floated with VTrans potentially, last year, but I just don't think that there is a structure in place that would be able to handle that. VPTA would be the people to do that, in my opinion. But right now their focus is pretty exclusive on Medicaid. So I don't necessarily see, where those folks would live. And, if they could live at GMT and then we start farming out some of our expertise to the other transit agencies and billing for that, that would be something that could potentially be helpful for us.
You read the second half of my question. So yeah, I think that could be something we could talk to other transit agencies instead of decreasing our headcount, offering service to other transit agencies on procurement or planning or things like that, because we've got a robust staff. I do think, as you put it, the organizational assessment showed very clearly that we spent 10 years ripping up the floorboards to feed the furnace, and that makes it really hard to operate the ship, and we can't do that again.
Okay.
All right.
Only last thing I'll point out is the medical firms and the rural transfer. We are budgeting, an 8% premium increase, which should be the ceiling for that. Hopefully it won't be that high, but when we negotiated the recent CBA, they were able to guarantee, only a ceiling of 8%. So that's some good news there. We also are proposing the end of the admin cost share. I think with the decision to go with the lower value plan, we wanted to provide some offset to the folks that were making employee or employee contributions. So point that out.
All right. I know you wanted to.
I do, and I don't want discussion to be cut off either, so it's a balance. Go for it.
I don't know. I feel like I still have a lot of questions, so I feel like this might be a two meeting discussion rather than one, so I don't want to.
Well, it is actually a 2-meeting discussion, and so here's the benefit. This is the intro to the budget to go out to public meeting. Yeah. The public gets an input, and then we have a must vote in January, correct?
Yes, however, it's, you kind of got to pass the budget in January when I bring it back. I mean, because it has to be passed by February. But what I will say is this is just the proposed 27 budget. We're gonna do a budget adjustment in 6 months or so when we get the state grant agreement, and we'll redo all the expenses and redo all the revenue. So this is really just the first shot budget. We'll make changes in the future.
I feel like this is a large policy document that we're being asked to, and I feel like once we put it out to public hearing, we are effectively endorsing it for the public.
It's true. Yeah.
And I just have a lot of questions, so I do support having the additional urban staff, but I would like more information about, what does that give GMT? and just more specificity about it makes this part more efficient and allows us to work on these projects. These are our priorities for FY 27. But how does having, the whole complement, sort of back on the team
Sure.
move GMT forward? And maybe it means that we were missing these things in the past and now we're not,
Yeah.
but that, for me, that would be helpful, I think, and also in telling the story to have those pieces articulated. I'm also curious, I know you mentioned training and just if this is the basic level of training, are we moving in a new direction, are we stepping up training? How is the training budget meeting general staffing needs?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it is a slight increase in training. I think Clayton had asked me to increase the training by 10,000 over what I think we got for our TAP in the past. So I wouldn't say it's a monumental increase. We probably weren't doing, had enough money for training in the past anyway. So this kind of just brings us closer to what we should be doing. So I wouldn't say it's a large increase. It's a small uptick from what we originally had. In relation to the positions that are being transferred over, I know Tammy's going to be focusing on the ADA program, which is an area that, we haven't had a whole lot of care and attention to in the past. We previously had someone that managed the ADA program, and then we never replaced that position to try to balance the budget. This kind of just gets us back to that. I know John's going to be working on a slew of areas where we need support, procurement, compliance, capital, those are all areas where I think we could use more help. And I'll let Clayton fill in any areas that I'm off on.
Well, I think that that's just a perfect example of why we can't immediately go back to staff reductions, because we saved $80,000 or $90,000 a year by not filling a position. And then shockingly, our ADA program costs exploded. You can't tell me those aren't related.
And I just want to offer another perspective. These are really great questions. And it is really important for us to consider how all these pieces play together. And I also think the next 6 months, we're going to go through a giant transition. And so much of this is estimate, not the staff piece, but like, what will the world look like? What will this world look like? And then what will the bigger world look like? And how do those play in together? I think it's a really tough, I don't want to push for considering major changes if we don't have a good sense of how it's really going to play out. So I appreciate all these questions, and I also appreciate that we don't know, and also V-Trans doesn't know, and then the feds is.
Yeah, I think I'd also just back up what Nick was saying. I mean, the GMT budget is a very living and fluctuating document that we revisit on a very, very regular basis.
Basically redo the budget.
More so than.
Every year. So
Yeah.
Every year, the adjustments typically change dramatically from what we originally proposed. But we have to have a budget and we have to get assessments. So we have to kind of do our best guess to get people to budget the assessments. And so that's kind of the big purpose of it, I think.
I just want to say though, I'm a little concerned that we don't even know how many in total FTEs we're going to be receiving on the urban side. And I agree that we need to have a better understanding than what we're hearing today about what our staffing needs are. So I hope that we are able to do the kind of study that Clayton talked about. So yeah, I just think I agree that we need more information before I feel comfortable with this, but I appreciate what you're all saying about our opportunities to adjust as we move forward. I just don't want to lose sight of this conversation.
I think my memo, Susan, had the number of FTEs that we had.
And what I can do also is that this week I'll send the board a listing of the admin positions that we have and their function, and I think that will help people see, so it's just not this imaginary ambiguous number that okay, it's 19 folks and this is what this person does and this is what this person does, and then you can see exactly.
Right, but if some of those, I don't know if they were 50% committed to urban, then what would their additional responsibilities be now that they're fully committed to urban? So those kinds of questions.
I mean, a perfect example is our property manager who's, right now is working on facilities in 5 counties and then after the transfer, he'll be working on, in urban only. And so, most of our, I think, admin staff are going to have, that type of cost shift.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, we can definitely provide that information.
Thank you for the questions and thank you for the responses. We'll look forward to kind of digesting that a little bit more. I appreciate that. All right, speed it.
Okay.
Speed is very, very fundamental, important.
General and admin, not as substantial as changes, but some changes. Again, the rural transfer, because some of these, lines had shared, costs between urban and rural, we're losing the ability to do that. So areas like communications, dues and subscriptions, admin supplies, computer services, consulting, all those areas are hitting us, not to the degree of the salary, wages and benefits, but some impact on due to the rural transfer. The audit increases due to the rural transfer. And the good news is that I thought we might have to do an additional single audit. We're not going to have to. So that this in the budget adjustment that will go down by $5,000. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to get the broker to give me a updated estimate of what we think our commercial insurance premiums will be after the rural transfer. So I did my best guess. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, the insurance budget line could change in the budget adjustment after we do the renewal. I did my best job to estimate what that would be, but there could be some volatility there. There really isn't any changes in operation and planning. There's $5,000 for nicer uniforms. That's about it for that section. Vehicle building and maintenance, we just did the 26 budget adjustment. So we just me and my staff went through and analyzed and did our best budget work for that for FY26. So for FY27, we really just added an inflationary factor. This area can really be impacted by, the quality of our assets. Do we get new buses? Do we get, mostly the biggest one is, do we get capital money from V-Trans, which helps, offset costs flowing into the operating budget. So really we just add an inflationary factor here. And when we get 26 actuals, we'll analyze them and then we'll update these lines in the budget adjustment to reflect what we think they will be. Contract marketing and other. So ADA went up by an inflationary increase. The big one here is down in the cost allocations before, which were allocations we made for expenses between urban and rural and urban. We had a cost allocation that went from the rural to the urban side for runs they did on the link for us. So it was an urban route, but it was done by a rural driver. So we had to allocate those costs in the past. With the rural side going away and, TVT coming in, this budget essentially plans on hiring TVT to do those routes. So we've got over $400,000 budgeted for that. I think personally, if we do it internally, we could save a lot of money from what I'm providing there, but we got to look at that and analyze it. But for right now, this budget, factors in hiring them to do that route. So that's what that $413,000. It's actually a new budget line that I created for this year. The only other thing here, or a couple other things, marketing expense went up by $66,000. Clayton asked me to increase that. I think there's some increased ridership for marketing campaigns that that management would like to do. And then
I'm sorry, Nick, could you talk a little bit more about that? The more frequent. Sorry?
I'll let Clayton talk about that. He knows more about that than probably I do.
So that was going to be the cost to have a full page piece in the 7 days every week. And so I suspect that this will be coming out of the budget by the time we present our final.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then the capital match fund is really just matching the past capital budget that was passed, I think, last month or the month before. Cost allocations, this is another area where they don't exist anymore because of the rural transfer, but you know, you could see some of the impact. So in the past, we made the rural system pay essentially the indirect rate. So we have an indirect rate that we bill our grants for general administrative costs. Rural's gone, so we can't allocate those costs anymore. We used to do work, the maintenance department did work on rural vehicles, and so that would essentially be a shifting of costs out of urban to rural, and we're losing that, so that's $200,000 plus impact. And the link is what I just talked about. I shifted that budget line up to the contracting services area. Bottom line, $841,000 roughly deficit. That's about 4%. Solutions and risks, I just, you know, kind of have some fare increases, changes, service reductions. I just talked about the Berlin link trips, increased local state support. More importantly, the risks to this budget, obviously higher inflation. You know, we don't know what our 5307 apportionment is. We could lose stick factors, or, you know, federal government could do something that we don't expect. Lower support from V-Trans is always a risk. Cash flow with the rural side going away. You know, I might have to, you know, we did set up a line of credit, but you know, there could be needs for borrowing. This is the motion that I recommend, and happy to answer any questions. Sorry for taking.
Yeah, no, this, you know, it's really good for us to have these conversations. It is a fundamental function of what we do, is to really have a good understanding of the finances and to invest appropriately. And it is really hard. It is always really hard. It is particularly hard with lots of unknowns and a change in our function and our design. And so I appreciate that this is best guess. I know that you generally do a pretty conservative guess and love those positive surprises. So I think this is the best we have at the moment. I know that we are looking for additional data, and then we will continue to have conversations, and investments help us to kind of right size things as they go. So I will ask for someone to put forward a motion, and I know it feels a little tricky.
Just would comment, finance committee is always looking for new members. So anybody who's like seriously like to dig into the weeds on these budgets, we welcome you to sit on the finance committee. When you take a close look at this budget, there's very little of it that is not already in CBAs or items that you're not gonna change. So you can fiddle around the edges and maybe save $100,000, and you look at a $20 million budget and you say, was it worth making those cuts? But that's something that we certainly can look at. We didn't have a quorum at the end of our meeting, but our discussion at the finance committee was positive. And so I would move the board recommend that we take this budget out to public hearing.
I'll second.
Additional discussion?
Two quick items. One, I think I heard Clayton say that he was gonna plan to take the marketing edition out. Is that?
I think we're gonna do that in the budget adjustment.
I think what Clayton, you said in the final budget, what does the final budget mean? I mean, I know that this is fiddling around the edge, but.
Meaning that I think that when we come back in January, that money may not be in there.
Okay, the only thing I'll add.
I'll add that weekly 7 days thing was mostly going to be a project that I was going to work on, where we were, you know, communicating with the public, you know, on a weekly basis, and with my departure, I'm not sure that's going to be necessary.
So just a question, did we post that yet in the Burlington Free Press? Okay, so we can make that change. That was my only concern, is we have to post the budget for public meeting and stuff, but we want to make sure that can,
I'm not suggesting that we remove it now. It's, you know, this is a draft that goes to the public. People will give us comments. We will make amendments, and which potentially could be including that, and then present something for you again.
And Clayton, I'm curious to understand more about what type of communication you had in mind. So if you have any example or more detail, I would be curious to hear about that before we make that decision.
Okay, I can send it your way.
All right, last question. Not last question. Okay, all appropriate.
I just, I do have a lot of concerns about marketing because I feel like the general lack of information, knowledge about how to ride the bus, how much to pay, how do you pay, how do you find out when the bus is coming, where do you go for information? So I would like to see additional investment in marketing. I'm not sure if a 7 days ad is the most effective route, but I would love to see a robust marketing proposal included in the budget. So it's my defense.
Sure, and then I realize I don't have a vote as the alternate, but I think the discussion here where we had a short conversation about fares and the interplay between what the regular fare is and when was the last time it was adjusted other than the return from fare free, the max and then the discount rate, and understanding that and really having a commitment to exploring this seriously between now and when this budget gets launched would be really important to me.
Got it. Noted. Oh. Austin? You can say something?
No.
So we have a motion on the table. Is that what you're gonna push forward? Or do you have a question?
Comment.
Go ahead.
I am supportive of this. We did this last year where we approved a deficit budget. It does telegraph to our partners, the situation we're in. I do think between now and January, I'm supportive of some of the conversations that we look at the Berlin Inn sourcing. We look at raising the fare cap, that we look at other strategies to do our part. I am hoping that we collectively will seek to have our partners help us in this transition. We were the ones who helped the state take over the areas when those areas were in trouble. We did our job. We audited well every year. We delivered good service to the public. I think we did an exemplary job to carry the ball. And I believe we're being good partners to hand off the ball to other great partners around the state. So in that, I think we need to do our due diligence to own our budget and try to skinny it. There's still going to be a gap. And then I think it's incumbent on our partners to help make us whole when we get out the backside. And for that reason, I'll support the budget as drafted with that kind of next step process understanding.
Well summarized, and thank you.
Thank you.
Catherine.
Super quick, I want to echo what Chapin said and just reiterate that V-Trans is supporting the rural entities as they take over with additional support, recognizing that there's a cost to transition, and I want to make sure that they don't forget GMT because there's a cost to transition as well on the GMT side.
Thank you.
If folks don't know, just remind them that we had about a $2 million fund balance in rural, and that's being given away to the two entities that are taking over rural.
3 million.
So we're doing our part.
We are, and we have been, and I think that was just well stated. I appreciate all the questions and the concern and the deep dive. I think that's what we're here to do, and I appreciate the historical perspective as well. So I'm gonna call a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Any opposed? Okay. Motion passes. Thank you for the presentation.
I abstain.
I'm sorry, I did not, yep, sorry.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So we are, quite behind, and that is okay. I want to tackle the rural transfer update memo because I think it's going to be a very fast thing. We have seen this memo, in various iterations over the past several months. It went from, we need you to focus on this to, we appreciate that this is moving forward in this way. Thanks for attending to these issues. This is the final, hopefully the final draft of that. Clayton, do you want to take a minute to walk through any changes?
Sure. And so I think you're absolutely right that this has changed. In the beginning, it was a sort of here's a laundry list of concerns that we have. And as we've gone through the process of working with TVT and RCT and V-Trans, we've addressed many of those issues. And so what you see here is a shortened document that talks about the transfer timing, talks about the support for the transfer internally, talks about the good working relationship that we've had with the partners involved, highlights that we do need to figure out the link service, and we heard from Nick during the budget presentation that there's ways that we could do the link service that would be more economical than paying TVT, we think. And then it ends with the, hey, we're going to need money for GMT Urban to pay for this transfer, and that we want V-Trans to maintain their commitment. And so this would go out to the different transportation committees in the legislature, as well as to our partners. I can tell you that this was looked at by RCT and TVT and V-Trans, and they didn't have concerns with it. So I don't see us sending this off and creating issues. And so I would just ask for a motion to approve.
I will make that motion if that's okay.
There was a question in the room. Do you want to pause that or wait for the discussion? Catherine, does it matter?
I don't care.
Go ahead, Eleanor.
I just, especially if this is going to legislators, I would like it to have a specific ask in it for a specific dollar amount. And I think that might also be helpful for V-Trans. Even
Well,
if it's a higher number than. Like
I
if
mean,
there's
this is not a legislative ask. This is providing an update on the transfer. And in order for us to have a specific number, we would have to negotiate that with V-Trans, because one of the things that going into this legislative session, at least at this time, we're in alignment with V-Trans on their budget. Now, if we want to, and we're going to be talking about this in the last half hour of the meeting. But if we want to deviate from that, which is certainly we can, I think that we need to consider what it would mean going into the session, not in alignment with V-Trans.
Well, I wonder if you want to provide more specific information about this has cost GMT $1 million and
I think that if we do everything that we should so that everything is perfect, we will have nothing done ever. And so I think that we just have to, at some point in time, realize that, hey, there's a time frame here. Now, the good news is that nobody's asking for this. This is something that we, sort of originally wanted to put out to protect us because we had a lot of concerns. Those concerns have been mostly addressed. And so we decided to carry on with this as mostly a positive things, because we wanted the legislature to see that we were going against our type, because we have a reputation of not playing nicely with others. And I'm not saying that that's that reputation is true, but it's a reputation that, other folks have fostered for us. And by having a document showing that we worked positively with V-Trans, RCT, and TVT, I think that's helpful for the legislature to see that we are cooperating.
And I would just add to that and say I'm a little concerned about specifying a legislative ask when we've today identified some areas of additional data needs for us to, as Chapin said, determine to what extent we can skinny our budget. So I'd be concerned about putting a number out right now.
Yeah, I actually really like going to the legislature and saying, we're doing it. Thank you. Everything is going pretty smoothly, and these are our continued needs. I think they will have a sigh of relief that somebody is not coming to them asking them for money. And it opens the door for them to think of us in a positive way. And so I think there's benefits to all of those. Okay. But thank you for, I appreciate it.
I'm going to stop so we can see each other. I'm sorry.
Catherine, do you want to make your motion again, or just, reiterate?
Reiterate that I will move to adopt the draft memo and to distribute.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Oh,
I'll give it to Susan.
Susan was faster than Chapin. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Or abstain? All right, moving along. So, Clayton and I are texting about what things we might want to throw overboard. I think we're gonna throw, board coordination a little bit overboard. And Tim, I understand that you have some additional data that will come in January, but do you wanna?
I'm still negotiating with the rural and urban O and D partners. What the final numbers are gonna be for the 265,000 additional funds that we received from V-Trans because of our budget shortfalls. So I just want to thank V-Trans for all their support, and we've worked closely together. Me and V-Trans as well as Rich Carmo would help me do crunch a lot of the data analysis so that we could show V-Trans the reasons for why we're so far over budget, and they were very helpful in providing additional funds. But I am still negotiating actively with the rural and the urban O and D partners on what those final additional federal award amounts are going to be. Some towns were fine with the additional 20% local match in the Chittenden County region that's required to match the federal dollars. A few just didn't have it in their budget, and they're approved FY 26 budget. So I know Milton was one, so we're gonna level fund them. Nick and I are planning to set aside some of those additional federal dollars. So for later in the year, if there's a situation where we're getting to a point where it might impact critical care, dialysis, or adult day services, we can infuse some of those set aside funds that we have. But if we're gonna forego my presentation today, I'm gonna plan on revising it for the January meeting to some more hard numbers on what those final allocations by O and D partner are going to be. Colchester has committed additional cash match. Agewell indicated that they couldn't quite squeeze the 20% match of the additional money that I awarded them. But they came up with $20,000, which is significant. So I kind of adjusted the awards accordingly based on that. But I'll have more to present. Sure.
Before we let it go, because this is such a present and, moving target, are there, questions that folks have, since we're gonna see it again in January, are there questions that folks have right now that they want to ask Tim for?
Can I add one quick thing, Amy? So
You can.
in addition to the great work Tim's done on the revenue side, we've also, just so everyone's aware, we've also reduced the trip allowances effective yesterday in the rural area and effective January 5th in the urban area. So we're more closely aligned with the other transit providers within the state. So folks will still have full access to critical care and adult day, but folks will be capped at 6 trips per month for other purposes, just in the O and D program.
So to add to John's point, the social personal going away, as well as the some of the other services, it will impact some members more than others. Just for example, you've got one member that 60% of their trips are under these trip constraints that are now, it's eliminating some of those trips for them. We do feel that some of the social personal will naturally shift to shopping, which is still an eligible trip purpose. So we factor that in. We did a 30% calculation to add some additional federal funding to those that are losing their social personal trips. Work-related trips, there was really only one provider that had a significant amount of work-related trips, which was Colchester. So that would be a significant impact in their program, and they're looking to see how they can continue to fund those at 100% within their budget. Any additional questions?
Catherine's got a question, her hand up.
Since I won't be here in January, I will just note that for the rural pieces of O and D, I think having, a smooth transition to these lower service levels and the associated costs with that is a perfectly reasonable expense to put on our fund balance. And that's why we have a fund balance, is to, stop the extremes. And so I would just encourage, where possible, to make the transition as smooth and slow as needed and access the fund balance as needed to do that.
So that's an excellent point, and I know V-Trans is working actively with RCT, who's taking over in the Franklin Grand region in January. So I know Cider's short on funds. They're trying to way overspend their budget. So I know that V-Trans is providing them some additional funding to get them as close to budget neutral as possible, Catherine. We're also planning to assist Central Vermont Council on Aging with some of those additional federal and state funds.
Okay, Susan?
Yeah, I had two questions related to this topic. I noticed that vocational work-related trips are no longer eligible.
Correct.
And I was just wondering if you had a sense of like what proportion of trips, like, what this impact would be on individuals.
We do have all that data, and I'm happy to include that in the presentation in January. We have all the raw data that we generate out of our scheduling and dispatch software, which breaks everything down. And we can certainly present that in January, what the impacts are. In fact, it's a good question because all of the O&D partners ask for the impact on their individual clients, and we've already shared that data with the O&D partners.
Do we have a sense, is this affecting a lot of people or not very many people?
Well, as I mentioned, the work-related trips are mainly focused in Colchester. I think that was a part of the program that got away from itself a little bit, to put it in a nice way. They were trending to spend in this fiscal year alone over $90,000 for their budget just on work-related trips, which is over 30% of the trips that they provide. Others are less impacted because a large majority, like you take A12 countywide, for example, formerly Champlain Valley Agency on Aging, 77% of their trips are still going to be eligible because they do a lot of medical, do a lot of critical care, dialysis, cancer treatments, adult day. So there's less of an impact on them. So it varies by provider on what the impact's going to be, but I'm happy to present that in January.
And do those folks have other options if this is no longer an option for them?
They actually do. They can work directly. The O&D partners can work directly with SSTA in the Chittenden County region, and we discussed that during our presentation last week to the advisory committee, where they can work directly with SSTA to pay 100% for those trips, and I think a lot of them are considering that outside of the federal funding.
Okay, thank you. And then, one other quick question. I noticed that there's a difference in our approach with urban and rural in terms of the application of in-kind dollars. Is that correct? And
there is. Yeah.
And why is that? And can we do something about that?
Well, the problem with in-kind is it accelerates the drawdown of the federal monies. It's like marking up the expense. So we try to preserve our federal funds as much as we can throughout the year, so it lasts the whole year. And it's always been that way. For example, on Central Vermont Council on Aging, they don't have the cash match to meet their federal award. They don't have the 20%. So that we've always applied additional in-kind to support them. And a lot of the services that they provide are very, vulnerable populations that they're serving. It's always been a 20% cash match in Chittenden County O&D. We have had discussions about potentially assisting those that, like Milton, for example, that just doesn't have it in their budget. Richmond might be the same case. I just haven't heard back from them yet. But those discussions are ongoing, whether or not we would consider applying in-kind in Chittenden County.
Well, SSTA doesn't use volunteers either, so they don't generate any of their own in-kind. So that's part of the problem as well.
But we could use other available in-kind sources.
We could use our own,
Yeah,
but again, we just draws the federal money quicker.
It does.
Because there's no cost share between local and fed at that point. It's just all fed.
So these are the kinds of questions I wanted to hear today, because it helps us hone what Tim's able to bring in January when we discuss it with further facts and figures. So other things that we want to ask for him to bring back in January? Okay. Sorry to cut it short, but I'm
No,
glad we'll
it's
have more
fine.
data in January to look through.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So on the agenda is something I should have prepared for, and I think the operative word is should have. But in thinking through what we've been talking about as somewhat of our values and our mission and our strategy, it is something I've been trying to get to of how we can sit down and I was on track, and then there was a big bombshell. And so I got distracted. And so I'm not prepared to talk about that today. Period. So I'm throwing myself overboard as far as work. Oh, no, that's not entirely true. Clayton, help me out. This is part of our conversation. Oh, that's I lied completely. And that one of the things that we need to talk about is going forward with different board structure and committees. Am I right, Clayton? Is that what we're talking about?
We're talking about, yes, there was going to be a variety of house cleaning things, and I'm sorry I didn't coordinate with you better on this. So I was
Well,
the one.
you did. I just have
threw you
forgotten.
overboard.
That's my brain. So I'm not going to throw myself overboard all the way. One of the things that we did have Clayton give an overview is a different committee structure. This is where I'm supposed to go, right, Clayton?
Sure.
God. Hopefully I won extra points for baking for you all as I fumble through this. So one of the things we talked about is a committee structure that would be obviously we'd have a leadership team, and Andrea, you can help anytime, jump in. Your brain functions better than mine. And a finance committee, those things would be of utmost importance. But we have to restructure them, right? We're gonna have 9 board members as of July 1, and 2 fewer as of January 1. So we'll have to have fewer board members on each. Although we have some amazing alternates that can add and round that out, which I appreciate. Sorry, notes are not there. Help me out, Clayton, please.
Well, I think that I would just say that this is a work in progress. I think that the leadership committee is still going to be chewing on this at their meetings. There was during the last discussion, there was items that were raised that people liked, items that were raised that folks had concerns about. So I think that we'll just continue with that process. And I would expect that probably by the end of January and February, we'll have a structure that we can put in place and move forward with. And so, yeah. I'm not sure that there's really much that we need to do at this time other than doing just what you did, Amy, and letting folks know that we haven't lost sight of that and that that it's still going to be a work in progress. And also, just as a reminder for folks, I included in the read ahead is that we do have 2 meetings scheduled in January. And so one is on Tuesday the 6th and the other is on Tuesday the 20th. So we are going to have more time next month to dive into issues than we usually do.
And I promise to be better prepared and bring a pencil to class. What's your comment?
Yes, as it relates to how the board is playing in the space of creating relationships with state partners and the legislature, part of what I'm interested in understanding is where the legislative engagement sits with the board. Is it with the leadership committee? Is it with an ad hoc committee? We're heading into legislative session. I think beyond the budget process, we need to have a legislative strategy and would love to participate and engage in that wherever appropriate.
Great. We're gonna talk more about that.
Yeah.
Because someone else is prepared to talk about that.
Okay.
Thankfully. All right. What am I missing? Board committee reports. We're gonna do that before we hit the legislative conversation. And finance, did finance discuss anything that wasn't?
Well, just a couple things. We went over our FY 25 finances, and There obviously some issues always crop up. The workers' compensation audit was a bit of a surprise to Nick, and it cost us about $100,000. The rural funding from V-Trans has increased by 200,000, so that was good news. We're gonna hear more about the Medicaid program update, but certainly we were in pretty large deficit for a while, but that's being dealt with, and we'll get back pretty close, and V-Trans is hopefully helping with that. The urban ended last year with a 8.7 operating deficit, which is not too bad on a $20 million budget, and rural ended up with about $794,000 deficit, which is fairly large, but they have a large piggy bank too, so it could be worse. Go ahead, Dick.
Oh, $794, that's what the deficit was, not 94,000, so it's much more manageable. But yeah, I think we're looking pretty good. My financial report is in the packet, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, leadership has met, obviously. We had our regular meeting last week and a special meeting last night. And in addition to talking through all the issues that we've been talking through, including the things that I just stumbled through and will bring back in a more cohesive way, we've been talking about what to do as we search for a new general manager, and what that process might look like. Last night we had just a quick special meeting to really figure out what we need to do. What is that process going to look like? How do we get it going? And so what we, I think, are going to do is when we searched for John's replacement and hired Clayton, we had a search committee that was stood up with a mixture of board members, staff members, and a union rep, we think. Were you? Was it you? Okay. That will stand that committee up, and that committee will take responsibility for reviewing the existing job description, and beginning to craft that. In the meantime, what we'd really like to do is ask everybody to start thinking through, like, you know, what qualities are we looking for to move us into the future? Where we need to go, what qualities have we had in the past that staff and board really appreciated? And see how we can kind of put that forward into a job description of, as Paul put it, the Superman or Superwoman, superhuman that will lead the organization from Clayton's departure. So that is the process. We are, I am not necessarily going to assign at will. I would love for someone to volunteer to be the chair of that, a board member to be the chair of that committee. Or co-chair.
I thought about it.
Okay.
I would be fine being. Okay. I will conquer my intimidation.
Better you than me, as I already said no. I say no all the time and it doesn't seem to work for me either. So looking for folks, and we will have we have to be careful so as not to have too many board members from any one committee represented. So if you're interested in that committee, let Andrea know and myself, and same with staff. If there are folks who definitely want in, let me know or Andrea know.
One thought is, I know we have a couple committees that aren't currently meeting. Can we kind of stand them down to eliminate? I mean, I'm not even sure, you know, like performance, for example. If we sort of temporarily stand down, that makes it a little bit easier to do that jigsaw.
I think we need to balance that with the proposed committee structure, which we really need to get going in January. So we have to be careful that the way Clayton kind of proposed the performance committee would a little bit be a kind of a super committee looking at performance and operating, and not safety, member feedback, I think, member engagement. So yes, but I think we've underutilized our alternates. So I think we can do it, because we have some really amazing alternates. Thank you to all who are currently here. So I think we can do it. So it's gonna be an intensive, hopefully 6-month-ish search. And the search committee, will have regular meetings in the beginning to get their feet under them, and then it will intensify as they read through applications, resumes, and then start the interviewing process. I don't think so. Yeah. Anything I'm missing from that conversation?
I think we want to circulate the existing job description sooner rather than later for folks' input, and feel free to share that with your, constituencies and stakeholders that you care about for their feedback as well.
Amy, I'll just point out, Dan had a chat that said V-Trans also was a
Oh, thanks, Dan.
representative on the committee.
Thanks, Dan. I forgot. So I'm not gonna get any baked goods for my poor performance today. My punishment.
You didn't see it?
Was RPC involved?
I'll take a look at my list, but I don't think they were.
They were not.
Might be something I can send us to mind.
I did try to assign Bob to the committee. He declined.
I have a comment.
Yes.
When Clayton arrived, you might recall that, and I don't know if it was specifically in the job description or not, but, he made it clear, it was stressed, in fact, that this is a human service organization. If you recall that, and you may, wonder why, because obviously a main duty is our finances and, everything we talk about and know about. But that was, and you recall, I could see that it was emphasized. Is that going to go forward? Is that going to be at least a factor in the whole discussion in the search? I mean, is it relevant?
I think that's exactly the soul searching that I'm asking folks to do.
Yeah.
What qualities do you think you're looking for? And I have to say, and I admitted this last night to the folks on our special meeting, is that I thought transit experience was the number one thing at that moment. And I'm glad that we got Clayton, because his human service, his communication, his relationship building for me was really an asset for what we needed at that time. And we had John, who had this massive amount of transit experience to support those things. So there's that nice balance, in my opinion. So as I soul search and think about what qualities, now those might not be the same qualities that we need going forward into this kind of future space. But that's exactly what I want folks to start to think about. What qualities are we looking for, not just in a leader, but what skills do we want them to bring to the table to move us forward?
Can Stephanie's circulate the current job description? That way we'll get an idea of what's on there and whether you want to add or subtract from that, of course.
And I also have all of the previous committees' notes and minutes and things. I can send all of that as well.
I do love a well-organized human. I wish I were one. The other thing that we wanted to talk about, one second, and we don't need to decide this today, but the other thing we discussed is the role of an interim. If we have Clayton for, 6.5 more months, but perhaps the person we end up hiring can't join us for another several months, depending on their contract, we should consider the role of an interim as well. And we don't need to decide that today, but I'm going to put it out there that it was something we discussed. Go ahead.
I'm curious about how the search process and interview process is going to align with the strategic direction process.
You should be curious about that. Those things should be aligned, right? So that's why we really need to pick up the pace.
Is one happening ahead of the other one? Are they parallel?
They're gonna have to be parallel.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't think we have the luxury of time.
Yeah, one thing I would stress is that this takes much more time than you anticipate. I mean, you've obviously seen this at the municipal level, but it was a very tight timeline the last time we did it to get Clayton on board when we did, and we were quite lucky that some of the factors around his employment allowed him to move very quickly and join us. It's not necessarily the case with everyone, so it'll be a very stressful timeline.
Thought, questions? Catherine, words of wisdom before you depart, your historical perspective?
That's the smile of someone.
I know, she's like, I'm not doing that. Hi.
No, I think that it's sad to lose Clayton. We have the benefit of, I say we, but you have the benefit of 6 months of Clayton, and I think you can't underestimate the value of having his feedback, being the person sitting in that chair in terms of understanding what's making the job successful, what's making it hard. Not only what do you need to do to find a new GM, but what do you need to do to structure the job in a way that makes it a job that someone can actually, on a personal and professional level, stay in for an extended period of time.
See, always words of wisdom. Thank you. Any other comments on this? Okay, so job description is going to get circulated. Volunteers to sit on the committee can be sent to Andrea and or myself, and then we'll round out the committee, and that's true for staff as well. Let me know if you're interested. Let us know if you're interested, and then we will get that moving hopefully in the next couple weeks. Okay. Clayton, anything? No, you're good. I saw you're unmuted. I just wanted to make sure.
I'm ready to tee up the next topic whenever you're ready, Amy.
Okay, one last question from Judy.
Yeah, so, thank you for offering, people to talk to you or. In other words, if, the meetings, particularly, the initial meetings, which might be fairly numerous, and regular, which they probably have to be, if they're going to be, in person or on Zoom, virtual, that would make a difference to a lot of people, whether they decide to volunteer or not. So maybe you could clarify, that, or at least in your mind.
I think I would let Andrea speak to that.
I mean, I think following the model of generally hybrid, I will likely prioritize zooming in from home. Because I don't like leaving my house.
Yeah.
But I think once we get to the sort of interview process, there will be in-person meetings.
Yeah.
Because we will sort of wanna, if possible, meet with candidates in person.
But initially, in other words, somebody who does want to volunteer and they feel more comfortable or need to do it virtually, that doesn't preclude them from volunteering.
Right,
Because it
yeah,
would be,
no, I think,
it's like now.
I think we'll basically follow the similar models to what we
Yeah, I
do
just
for
feel.
board and committee meetings.
I would say, from my perspective, if someone is interested, we can gather the groups of interested people and then we can figure out a way to proceed. Exactly who of interested people will be on that committee, and then within those groups, we can make it work. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so we're gonna move forward to talk about this legislative approach. I'll let Clayton tee it up and thank Chapin for raising it, and Susan raising those issues to the forefront.
Thank you very much, Amy. And so I want to let folks know that we have with us Adam Necrason and Teo from the Necrason Group, and they are our lobbyists and are exceptionally helpful in having us navigate the issues at the State House. And so an answer sort of to one of Chapin's questions earlier, for this past fall, the Leadership Committee has been the committee that has worked on the legislative agenda. We had Teo and Adam come in September to sort of give us the lay of the land, and so we developed our position based on that. And so I thought that one of the things that would be good to start off with is to ask Adam and Teo what their thoughts would be about an idea that Chapin had presented. And that is that I think Chapin is very wise in that in order to encourage decision makers, either at the local or state level, we need to offer hope other than just, hey, give us money or there'll be service reductions. And so one of the things that I wanted to hear from Teo and Adam is, if we were to come into the legislature with sort of a new vision, or hey, this is, with additional funding, this is what public transit could look like in Chittenden County, whether that's something that would be received warmly by the legislature, or whether that would be something that would be seen sort of out of touch with the sort of moment. And so I'm going to turn things over to Teo and Adam.
Glad to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. And the direct answer that I'm then going to unpack is both. And that's always the nature of leadership moments in the State House when there are a lot of competing pressures. GMT is in a unique position of responsibility as a essential service provider in your community. And it's really important for the state's economy, for the region, for vulnerable people, that you are constantly providing vision and leadership so that we are leaning into the fiscal pinch with a vision and a mission that is focused on our riders. And that at the end of the day is what's expected of you. Having said that, and then for like a 3-minute level set, the Krasny Group comes to you. Teo and I are part of the next generation of our firm. We're a many multi-client government public affairs firm. Our Vermont work is very centered around the providers that are helping Vermonters with healthcare, regional planning, solid waste services. In the absence of major state government, a lot of essential services are provided by quasi-governmental or municipal entities, and you're a leading example of that. The highest of level is education reform is the big thing, the property tax, and it's going to drive everything at the State House this year. Is there's a bipartisan leadership effort from the governor, the pro tem, and the speaker to try and transform schools and put in a foundation formula for cost control, and that would lead to a progressive update on things like income sensitivity. That is very difficult for all of them and unusually consuming a lot of attention. The other big stuff, the impacts from the federal government, which are particularly acute in health insurance exchange subsidies. You're an employer, you have a major expense line for healthcare, so you're familiar with this area. And state government, Vermont state government, is not in a position to backfill the loss of the federal subsidies for health insurance costs for a lot of working people. And we will see that kind of rock the state in the coming year. The important priorities for growth of housing, childcare, transportation, they're in focus at the State House. And that's kind of where you come in, and we move away from the general funding crisis and the ed fund, sort of, back to it in a second, and into your transportation space, where you have agency leadership and legislative committees that are working well together. And GMT is a valued partner that's kind of settled into a professional position with them. Clayton's leadership is noteworthy. It's meaningful. We started with you a year ago, partly because it was important to try and reset at the State House and be focused on bringing lawmakers the facts and the consequences of various scenarios. And you're doing that well. It's been tough times, changing routes and cutting budgets. And you have local lawmakers who are upset about that. And we've helped Clayton lean in that space with information sessions and really helping the local delegations be as supportive as they can and understand that you're rerouting as efficiently as possible, but in an age of serious fiscal constraints. We understand we're not in crisis right now, and a lot of things at the State House. And so to kind of now start turning towards the question of how you show up, there's a lot of institutions in Vermont that are fragile institutions. Blue Cross Blue Shield, for example, Brattleboro Retreat, the Brattleboro Memorial Hospital, you know, rural hospitals, and they are tending to get a lot of the attention for how do we keep them from going out of business? How do we keep them from failing is the name of the game at the State House. And that can be frustrating, but it's where a lot of the attention is. In the transportation space, we know Senator Westman is the chair of Senate Transportation. He's a living legend in Vermont, like longest serving lawmaker, very knowledgeable, very experienced. He's got a priority on trying to get more resources into the transportation fund. And, you know, that's a challenge because you're competing with the general fund and the education fund, and redirecting dollars is a way to do that. And we know that that's important for him and for leaders in the Senate. As it relates to the question of what you could and should bring, bringing a vision for your community is a good idea. Offering a menu of choices and consequences to elected leaders, your responsibility. It's then up to them to decide whether to do something about it or not. And, you know, we are little L lobbyists with you, but we're really here to respect the authority of state leaders and the partnership you have with them. And so, you know, we're excited about how GMT is bringing, you know, leadership forward. We would want to learn a little bit more about, you know, the tax and spend part of what an agenda for a vision would be, Clayton, because you don't want to be seen kind of claiming you're unusually special compared to these other crises, but at the same time, you don't want to be not advocating for your interest, and doing more with less is not real, right? You all lead institutions, but it nevertheless is the expectation of you that you try to find a way to do that. So let me stop there. Teo, I know I did a high level to get to a general answer, but Clayton and Teo, are we on track with that lay of the land?
Well, I think that, well, I'm going to let Teo respond first.
Yes, couldn't have said it better myself. I think we would both like to learn more about the idea of kind of reprioritizing some of these routes to, like, I think it was like 4 major lines, focusing on the successful routes. And, you know, Clayton, this is something I think we would want to have you in a Zoom room with some of the Chittenden County legislators, begin socializing this idea. You know, legislators are going to start checking out around Friday for the vacation. And when they get back, it's going to be a whirlwind. But as Adam said, I think it's generally a good idea to present a proactive, positive vision and just start to gain traction where you can. And that's where, you know, we can try to help.
Yeah. And I think my concern is with timing. And I think that, you know, what I've heard from Chapin as a suggestion that we examine, you know, moving forward as a strategy, I think is really a good idea. It's something that I think that we probably, you know, are going to need to move towards because of fiscal reality. But my concern is that it would leave some of our communities out. And I don't know how we develop a legislative position that I can then present, you know, to the committees, you know, beginning in just a few weeks, with a vision that really would, you know, be very impactful. I just think there's not enough time, you know, to go through an inclusive process where we're going to hear from folks. Because if we were to focus on where we're the most efficient, which again, I think that that's probably the direction that we're going to need to go to, you know, that means that there's not going to be service in some of our members' communities. And so I don't know how we, you know, run towards that without a full, you know, strategic process here.
I'm going to pause and see Susan's got her hand up, and then Austin did a little wave over here.
I think, you know, we have been having this conversation of our need to have the space for the board to talk about what GMT's vision should be, especially now that the transfer is moving forward and coming to fruition. You know, historically and to this day, we continue to talk about GMT as a human services organization focused on riders and the need to provide particularly services to the transit dependent, which I fully, you know, agree with. At the same time, I think we should be opening up conversation around the idea of GMT as an organization that recognizes and finds way to support economic development and presents itself as part of the solution to the state's funding crisis and not just a sink. And I don't feel like we as a board have had the opportunity to really dig into what that might look like. Is that a realistic possibility? What are our options around appealing to what we've been calling choice riders, all of that. So I think it's really hard to talk about how we can start presenting ourselves differently to the state without us actually having done the work to understand, you know, what that might look like. Right? Because GMT also does contribute to other state goals around climate, around the increasing discussions around how we are developing, you know, the state's lands. So I think there are different ways that GMT can position itself as a contributor to the state's problems, as opposed to, you know, another competing financial demand.
Thanks. And I think you meant we're contributing to their solutions. Hopefully we're not contributing to their problems.
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
Be solutions focused.
Yeah, I think the crux of the issue here is, it was somewhat we outlined all throughout the conversation today. You know, we've been continually cannibalizing our service and our staff in order to keep the organization going. And in doing so, we are hindering our ability to then build towards the future that everybody wants, and that ironically would bring us in our revenue. We're kind of in this sticky middle situation. It's almost like a crisis of poverty, where a little bit of nudge could, in the right direction, could push us towards prosperity. But you know, we're never starving, but we're always hungry. And I think that's kind of a message we need to bring that directly to legislators and just explain that, you know, per our conversation around fares earlier today, there is probably price elasticity in fares if we had the frequency and dependability that not just, you know, non-choice riders, but choice riders could use. So in terms of painting a picture and a narrative and a story for legislators, I think it needs to be one of, you know, we could do great things. We could be sustainable in revenue streams. We could be a partner in economic development, and you could do the single largest, you know, transformation of our state land use policy and actually count on the transit lines that are in that. Whereas right now we're cutting routes along areas that have been planned for another 50 years. You know, I think we need to carry that message that we're frankly at an inflection point, and if folks want to actually dig ourselves out, it's going to take an initial investment. And I think that's the problem we've had all along here. I personally think we need to own up to the fact that we as a board, some of us were vocally against, but we wasted a lot of time, energy, and money, frankly, on the fare free idea, and that would be the cornucopia that solved all of our problems. We need to lean into, you know, service dependability and frequency as the thing that'll bring us out, and that's going to take an initial investment.
Great. Thank you for creating space and time on this agenda for this really important conversation. Time is short. What the two last commissioners have said, I think, are generally kind of in alignment, not only with those comments, but with my thinking that what I talked to Clayton about briefly is that, yes, you know, we need additional state or regional support to help stabilize and grow. But no one in this time, and we heard from Adam at our lobbying team that, you know, we need a compelling story in order to move the needle because there's so many mouths that want to be fed right now. And ultimately, I think the base of our service right now is meeting a substantial social service need, and we need to say that we're successful in that, which we are. And we could put relatively quickly, using our next gen plan, it's not that old, to say, what does it look like to take our 4 highest ridership routes that touch most of our member communities and turn them into the reliable 15-minute service that Austin talked about, to be able to develop more housing, support Beta, support South Burlington's town center, etc. And I think without a lot of work, is it going to be the best plan? Is it going to have lots of public engagement? No, but if we take what we have now, stabilize it, and show an investment future in the routes that have paid dividends for decades and where we want to see growth, I think we can put together a really quick proposal to be in front of the legislature. I'm not Pollyannish. It's going to take a couple years. We're not going to win things on year one, but we've got to be in this space with a proactive vision, or we're just going to be in a spiral the wrong way, not a virtuous spiral. So I'm happy to participate and engage in a committee, whether it's leadership or however, to, you know, get a quick package together. I think the more service we have, the easier it is to support the administrative costs we talked about today, wanting to preserve. If we want to have capacity to be an expert in this space, we need a certain level of service to support that organization. And I think this transit line reinvestment that is connecting most of Chittenden County and making a commitment to the developers and policymakers that we're going to be there every 15 minutes for the next decade gives a message that we're not able to convey today, which is hurting, I think, our relevancy in the landscape. Thank you. So let me know how I can help. Burlington wants to continue to invest in this team's success. We're $2 million a year in. We're open to more. We want to be a partner, but I think we need a vision to get people to invest more.
I think one more thing I'd add is that, you know, a major trend and motif of the coming session is going to be a trend towards regionalization, and obviously we're a regional transit, you know, authority. However, we're a shining example of what's wrong with a regional model, and maybe a good shining example in the future of how you can get that back on track. Our assessment model is flawed, and obviously we've done a lot of work on that, but that needs to change before we can change anything else.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, don't
I'm
apologize. This
just
is
following on
also
so
fundamental.
many very chewy ideas. So I really appreciate what you said, Susan, about having a strategic vision. It does feel like we're jumping the gun, and I totally agree with you, Chapin. Like, I think that is, you know, something, having that vision and selling that vision and going to the legislature with something other than this is our budget gap. But this is how we, you know, this is how we achieve our housing targets. This is how we achieve supporting the companies that the state is very interested in investing in, and other goals. As you said, climate action, active transportation, which transit is, because people walk to transit and it enables biking. So I did not expect this agenda item to be about this. I was expecting it would be more, how are we going to talk to the legislators about sustainability? Because that's something that I think that the municipalities have been talking about, and as municipalities, we all have voices with our legislators, and so how are we communicating with our legislators? Because we, as municipalities, do meet with them. So I feel like this has been sprung on the board in some ways. So conversation.
So
I-
one of the, sorry, Alana.
Clayton.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Alana.
It's just, I feel like that there should be some discussion about where we want to go with our lines with our service and some clarity before asking the legislature for that. Not that I'm opposed to it.
You know, so one of the things that I would encourage us to do is to lean into something that we're doing without, I think, taking enough credit for. And that is that we are doing a generational reorganization. And that we heard from our partners, we heard from the legislature that they wanted us to, to have an urban focus. I think that we lean into the fact that we've done that transfer well. The transfer is ahead of time in RCT, and it seems like it's, on time with TVT. And that we emphasize that this is going to give us the capacity to do all of the things that we're talking about here. Sorry. But that, I think that that for this session that we need to take credit for doing what we were asked to do. And that by doing that, we will demonstrate that we are a good partner. We will demonstrate that we are somebody that's worthy of investment. And then we can start to preview what that's going to mean by having us be urban focused. I think that it would be a mistake to try to establish a vision at this time, because the reality is that we're not even done with the transition. We're going to have 9 board members in July of next year. So 4 of the folks that are part of this conversation now are going to be moving on, unfortunately. And so I just think that, now is not the time to come up with a 10-year vision, that we're going to try to sell to somebody.
It would be great if we had a 1-year vision.
Yeah, that one made me uncomfortable. But perhaps you just articulated that, flying without our values, or where we hope to be moving toward, I think is hard or dangerous or both.
I did see that Adam raised his hand. I think that.
Well, yeah, it's running right down the middle of what you're saying, but it is important that lawmakers see you are in the middle of an arc of change, okay, and that you're really in like the middle of a 3-year moment where you're having to kind of refocus, and they are looking to see and know that the governance structure of the enterprise is looking ahead for economic growth, for doing better. And so let me say it in plain terms. We don't want to be seen being flat-footed. We don't want to be seen being pie in the sky. And the expectation of all of the quasi-governmental service providers right now, from health to transportation, is to tighten our belts and focus on, transforming, and not just language, but like the metrics of it. And so when I hear Austin talk about, and I'm not going to get it right, but like you had a phrase there that was very State House friendly. Like, we want to be we're in the middle of change. We're tightening our belts. We want to now have an internal process that leads to some measurable things. That's good enough in the moment. It's not okay to be just focused anymore on here's our budget, here's what we're cutting. There is an expectation that you are going to be the experts to figure it out, or agencies do it to you, and that's never good, right? And so I have a lot of excitement around the conversation you're having and showing performance-based outcomes that you want to keep in focus to serve your communities. The timeline for all that, I don't know. The internal dynamics of that, you're going to sort out, but stand for something or you'll be defined as flat-footed.
Paul has a comment, and then Andrea, and then we are over and seriously need to wrap up so that the day can continue.
I think this has been great conversation, and I agree with everything that's been said about, looking forward, creative vision, and let's improve our service and let's become something everybody's proud of. But I think there's nuts and bolts that we have to think about as well. We're looking at FY 27 not well, FY 28 worse financially. But in the meantime, what would it cost us to improve the level of service on, say, the 4 main routes or 2 main routes? What would it actually cost in driver hours, buses, transportation? So we talk about this again in February or whatever, that we get back to it. Let's be realistic and say it's gonna cost us an extra $1 million to improve our service to 15 minutes on 2 routes or 3 routes or 4 routes. So we know what we're talking about. Now, if we're looking for money, maybe that's one way we can approach legislature or others to say, if we had this money, this is what we could do with it. But we know right now we're running deficits and we're projected to have a big deficit in 28. So we got to find money to improve our service, but I agree we need to go there.
Keep it quick, but, and Paul, you said some of what I was gonna say, but I think we sort of keep dancing around this a little bit. I think that, there is probably, I think we need a venue outside of once a month, 2 hours to talk about strategic planning. I hesitate to say this as we're also standing up a hiring committee. But I think we need to have a larger conversation about that strategic vision. And to your point, Paul, I think that strategic vision needs to be backed up by data, needs to be backed up by what does this look like and how much does it cost and what do we lose when we do that also. But I think that's, a conversation. That's a really big conversation, and I think it needs to have its own time. Excuse me.
I know we're short on time, but I think that there's something that has to be said that's really critical for this conversation. And that is that our board members are volunteers. And you all are doing what I think is impossible, which is to have a volunteer run board that's running a $30 million operation. And I think that there's only so many hours that people can volunteer. And so I think that that's, one of the challenges is just the time that you have as volunteers. And so that's all I wanted to say.
If I could just respond to that just for a quick minute. I think that, we've been talking about this idea of having space to talk about a vision for GMT for a very long time. And we've had to do a lot of things to get to this point. But I think that we should see if there's interest in the board to engage in that. And, I don't know whether, I thought that the plan was to do it through the leadership committee. I don't see why we don't stand up a committee to talk about the process that we can begin to, as Andrea was saying, to talk about visioning. So, if there's interest in our board to participate in such a committee, then, well, let's check that first. Let's see if there is. And if there is, then I think that is a way, as Amy said earlier, we're going to be doing both things in parallel. We're not going to be doing one thing, visioning and then hiring and then visioning. We want to move forward with this in parallel. So let's test the interest of the board and see what our capacity really is.
I just put that note before you even said that. That's in my notebook, Susan, that we could stand up that committee. And so Austin wants 25 seconds and then alone, or I don't know.
All I'm gonna say is I think we just need to be realistic about our capacities as a board with a finite amount of time as we embark on hiring a new general manager and much, much more. At the end of the day, staff has a good grasp on what the organization needs to succeed. And I think we should channel that to cut some of our workload out. And I think we should also just remember, this was imparted to me a long time ago by a man in his 90s who worked for a long time in the Army Corps of Engineers. In a crisis time, an imperfect plan even if, you know, marginally imperfect, executed perfectly is much better than the perfect plan that you can't get in a reasonable enough time to even meet your challenge. And so I think we need to not let the perfect be the enemy of the good, to put it much more plainly, put forth a vision that is good enough, that is based off of what our staff is feeding us, that the organization needs to succeed, and move with that. Do we revisit it almost like a budget that we do a budget adjustment for? Yes, but we need to put forth a vision that is good enough for now, that rallies people to our cause, and aggressively attack that vision and in the most perfect way possible, and revisit it and redefine it if need be on a regular basis. But for right now, what our communities, what our legislators are looking at us for is some sort of vision that they can buy into.
Yeah.
That is backed by what staff needs and what data is and what trade-offs we're willing to make. I think we need to do that. We need to do that quickly and then move on.
You're close enough that I can poke you before
Yeah,
I
sorry.
go. Alana, and then Chapin, and then I'm calling it.
Sorry, I'd just like to ask for a straw poll just on who would be available to meet 1 or 2 times additionally per month. I know that was contemplated for the rural transfer, and I think this would be a very good use of time, so.
Yep. I don't know, is there any interest, in a strategy, committee or visioning committee?
Did she ask about staff or about board members also?
Board member.
I would,
When we,
on a board, like on a board discussion, like not a committee, but the board.
Oh, I misunderstood.
Yeah.
Should I say it again?
I'm wondering if the board would consider meeting an additional 1 to 2 times a month to talk specifically about strategy.
So my hand is not up for that. I'm worn out. This volunteer position is kicking my butt. Hold on, Susan,
just
Paul.
point out that when we get to a 9-member board, we'll have 21 people available to work on committees. That means that the alternates that we have to be charged with being on a committee and work on a committee and show up to committees. We've got the people power to do it. We're not using it.
Yep, agreed. Susan?
But
Oh, didn't you have your hand up?
no, I was saying that I would support. I like the better idea. I like is standing up a committee of people that are interested in this and then bringing that back to the board. So
Okay. Because the chair's not getting to it. She sucks in that department.
Yeah, agreed. I will serve. Agreed. What Susan said, not what you said, thank you. I'm glad I got you on that. Look, the next gen plan is not that old. We can put together an imperfect plan that will be good. Staff will help us with this. We will pick this up and we will run this legislative session. Whether we're successful or not, we don't know unless we try. We're gonna do it, team. Let's not beat ourselves up. We've got a good organization. We're doing great things every day. And we just need to remind the public and the investors in that, let's see where we go. We've got this.
Good place to end.
It's a pretty good place to end. And so I'm gonna call an end to this conversation. It is very much the crux of where we need to go. And I appreciate all the comments, both on this and all the other topics we had today. I wanted to take a moment and be chair for a second and just express gratitude for all of you. But in particular, I wanted to express gratitude to Catherine. Oh, I don't even know if she's still here. Catherine. Okay, there you are. You're in the corner and I don't have my glasses on. Catherine and Bob. For so many years spent being a part of this board and this organization and really truly being an advocate for this organization and for the staff and the service. You have both been extremely wise and helpful and just kind board members. And I've greatly appreciated both all the things that you have both done. I appreciated it enough to bake for you and to get out of my house very early. And now I have to eat all the things that you are not here to eat. But thank you very much. We wish you all the best in your Franklin Grand Isle endeavors and what you're going to solve transportation issues there. So thank you very much. Thanks to all of you for being here this morning. And I wish you all a very safe and healthy holiday season.
Move we adjourn.
I wanted to do that.
Oh.
Withdraw.
Withdraw my motion.
Well, I wish you all the best in your pursuit of urban transit excellence. And with that, I will move to adjourn my last GMT meeting.
Thanks.
Second.
Congratulations. All
Second.
those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Happy holiday, happy new year, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
hopefully things get better.